Often do you talk to your audience? And I don't mean social media posts or going live or doing videos or emailing. How often do you ask them what's going on with them, especially regarding what it is you offer? How often do you ask them what problems they're experiencing or what they need from you? How often do you ask them questions? That's what I want to talk about with you today. And these are very real questions I'm asking you. So tell me in the comments, if you will, how often you're talking to them. Do you never talk to them? Do you talk to them occasionally, once a year or so? I make a point of talking to my audience at least once a quarter. And actually, I've been talking to them much more intimately recently. And this is what I want to talk about with you today because I've had some huge takeaways that I want to share with you today. So first, if we haven't talked before, hello, my name is Susan Chakowski, and I work with the introverted business owners to help them thrive in what feels like an extroverted marketing world. And talking to your audience can be really intimidating, especially, if you own your business and you're emotionally involved in your business and you need to ask people questions about your business or related to your business. It can be really a freaky thing to do. So I've been doing this recently. And again, I want to bring some of these ahas that I've had to you. And there's a very specific reason why I talk to my audience. First of all, I talk to them at least once a quarter. I talk to you at least once a quarter because I could make an educated guess based on my years of experience on what I think you need. But do I know what you actually need? Especially considering the changes that have gone on in the world. These last 2 years, things shift. And so it's important for me to check in. What do you actually need? Not what do I think you need based on what I've done. What do you want to tell me you need? That's why I'm talking to my audience. And in fact, right now, I'm also building a new course. It's actually an old course that I'm completely updating. All the more reason, it existed in a certain form before, which worked. But now I'm updating it and delivering it. So I need to update it also based on what my audience needs because things have shifted. Now, I'm in the marketing world, right? So things have shifted, like we're doing more video. We're doing more short form content. There's all sorts of things that have shifted in marketing. There are things that have shifted in my clients' worlds as well. So I need to check in on that. So that's specifically it. Instead of making an educated guess, I am asking, what are you really experiencing? That's really my one go-to thing that I'm trying to find out. But there's a way to go about it. And I can send a one-off question to social media or ask you here, and we can have a conversation. But because I've been running a course, I have been talking to my clients one-on-one. So I put a message out, and I'm going to get to this. I'm going to tell you, I'm jumping ahead here. But I wanted to, let me tell you where this is. Because I'm building this course, I didn't want to just kind of know what's sort of happening with a one-off. I wanted to get, really to know some of the people in my list, in my audience, on my email list and in other spaces. So here's how I connected with them. Let me tell you that as well, because one of the questions you might have is, great, how do I ask them? And you can absolutely post something on social media, but I didn't want to know what the people I randomly talked to maybe wanted to know. I wanted to know what the people who are in my actual audience, people on my email list or people in other communities that I'm in, what do they actually need? Because I have a more nurtured relationship with them. So those are the people I'm talking to. And so one thing that I'm hoping you'll grab here is choose who you want to ask. Don't just put it out in the world and say, hey, can somebody talk to me about this? Make sure the people you're talking to are actually fitting that ideal persona, that avatar that you believe that you serve, that you want to serve, that you design within your business to serve. Make sure you're talking to the right people. That's an important thing. And in fact, I did, and this was overwhelming for me, I did 22 interviews, one-on-one interviews. It was a lot. I was wiped out for 2 weeks in a row doing that. But that meant that I had some really solid gems. I walked away being like, wow, that was gold. Great conversations that really told me what is going on with the people in my list, on my email list. When I say list, I mean email list, but I also mean in these other communities, people that I am more nurtured and, connected to. And when you talk to even a few people, if you talk to 5 people, if you're talking to the right people, they can represent your audience. And it's up to you to decide whether or not they're the right people. As you're talking to somebody, is this the person that you envision taking part in whatever it is you offer, buying from you? And actually, out of those 22, there were a lot more than 5 or 6 that were really solid. A majority of them were. But it also gave me a really good overarching understanding of the people in my audience. It was a lot. I go back and say, do 5, just 5. It's all you need. But I did 22, and it really, in the position I was in, I really wanted a lot more input. So it was helpful. Good morning, Cheryl. Cheryl, the question that I have for you today is, how often do you talk to your email list? Let me try that again. How often do you talk to your audience? Specifically, I mean your email list right now, because that's what I'm about to talk about here. But how often do you ask them? And I don't mean talk to them like I'm talking to you now, but I mean ask them questions about what they're experiencing. And, when I connected with them, again, I sent out emails, and I also, reached out into some communities, some communities that I'm connected to. And what I'm getting out of it, and this is huge, what I'm getting out of these conversations that I've had is their real experiences. I'm instead of sitting here and saying, I think that you're experiencing this, or you're probably experiencing this, I'm like, what are you experiencing? And I'm getting their real experiences, their real stories about what has happened to them and what their world looks like. One of the things I'm really enjoying is I'm getting some exciting metaphors that I'm really excited about using and leaning into. And I say using and leaning into because they are the metaphors that my audience is thinking in. It's how they envision it. And so when it comes to that, definitely, we can make up stuff, or we can talk about our single client, or we can really get into their heads and find out how they think about it. Metaphors are important. I want to go off on this for a second. Metaphors are important. Metaphors are important because each person experiences their own unique thing, but the metaphor brings all of that together. Here's one metaphor that I really, really loved. One of the people that I talked to described marketing as a mystical beast, like a unicorn. And I was caught for a second because I was like, unicorns are like these big special magical things. And he's like, here's the thing. When you're dealing with a unicorn, if you approach it wrong, you're going to get stabbed. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. And then we had a conversation about it. We were like, but you could also, if you can approach that unicorn the right way, you can jump up on its back and it's going to take you for a lovely ride. And it's going to be a magical experience. And it was like, oh, okay, that is an interesting way. Tell me if that resonates with you. Is that an interesting way to talk about marketing? Another one that was in that same conversation is, marketing is like a dragon, right? Again, if you approach it wrong, you're going to get burned. But if you approach it from the right angle, it can be magical, and it can take you places, and it can be a crazy ride. And I'm thinking Harry Potter and being on a dragon and flying across the water. Just amazing experiences can happen for you if you approach it right. So that's just one example of some of the metaphors that I've been getting, which are just fantastic. But also, I'm learning about their language. I'm learning about the language that the people in my audience use. And I've got some examples for you, but I asked Cheryl whether or not she, how often she communicates with her audience, asking them questions. And Cheryl says, after reading the email that I sent this morning, she'd like to do it more. I think that's a great idea. I like the idea of asking, connecting with them maybe quarterly, but these interviews that I'm doing, I only do every few years because they take some time. But when I'm in this position of, I'm creating this new course, I really need to dig in because I don't want to just build a course and throw it out in the world. I want to build the course that you can use that's actually going to serve you. So I need to know what you need. And that's the whole point right there. So, Cheryl loves the creative thinking. Yeah, these are things I would not have thought of if I had not talked to my audience. It was huge. And we're talking about email lists right now. I do want to just kind of say, if you want to get my emails, or if you want to learn a little bit more about being an introvert and marketing, there it is. The Introvert's Tactical Guide to Digital Marketing is a great place to start. Grab that at susancz.com/tactical. That will get you there. Notice it's an SUZANCZ, which is the way we spell things around here. Anyway, I want to, get a little bit more specific about the language I've learned. And I am, by the way, building to the point. At the end of this, I'll tell you, and it won't be long, but I'm going to share the 3 questions that I'm asking that I think you could benefit from knowing. Maybe these are questions you could ask. But I want to get into some of the language I'm learning. So hearing our audience speak in a particular way that they do is one of our big takeaways in these situations. When we can hear how they say something, that we say something. Here's the problem with us in our marketing is we say things from within our industry. I'm going to talk to you from within the marketing industry. So I'm going to throw language around that you're going to be like, okay, but what does that mean? Or it might not resonate. Even though you understand what it means, completely understand, it might not resonate because it's not how you think about it if you're not in the marketing industry. For example, I think of it as the marketing industry or being in the marketing industry. And one of the people I interviewed, in amongst everything she's saying, she said, since I'm not a marketer by trade, I'm like, oh, I would never have thought to say it that way, but she thinks it that way. So that's a way that I might want to try saying it, because that might be how somebody outside of the marketing industry might think about themselves as being not in the marketing industry. Okay, I'm getting a little meta here. Let me get in a different example. I tend to ask the question, where are you struggling? And that's just how I think about it. Where are you struggling in your marketing? It's the question I put out in my email every now and then. Where are you struggling in your marketing? And the language I'm hearing my interviewees say back is, where I'm stuck is. This is their verbiage. Where I'm stuck is, or I'm getting lost with, or I need to clear that blockage, or I'm feeling stagnated. First of all, these are great ways to ask the exact same question. And second of all, that's not how I would have thought to ask it. And maybe if I ask it that way, it will resonate with them more. So that's another example. I've got 2 more examples for you. One is I tend to, and I talk about this when I talk about coming into the membership, where you're going to find other like-minded introverted entrepreneurs, like-minded. When I was talking with somebody, this is just the other day, she said, as I'm talking to you, I feel like I'm talking to a kindred spirit. And I was like, oh, that is so powerful. Not just that we're like-minded, but we're kindred spirits. I'm like, that is what you'll find in the membership, right? That what great language that I wouldn't have found, that I don't think I would have found in the thesaurus. And I'm often in the thesaurus going like, how else can I say this? Just because we say things the same way over and over, and we should find some other ways to say it. So I'm always looking for other language, but I would never have thought kindred spirit. And I love that. And I can see how my audience is people who have that deep feeling of needing a connection, and they're looking to make a connection. Kindred spirit makes so much sense. I'm like, oh, I wish I'd thought of that. I'm glad I bothered to ask my audience, because I got this word from them, and maybe I'll use that going forward. I think it's brilliant. Here's one more example. I tend to stay away from the word overwhelm. I think it's overused. I think that it's general, it generalizes, and it doesn't really say what I'm trying to say. And so I use other words. I'm trying to think what I even use now. Do you just feel like there's too much going on? But so many of the people that I've talked to use the word overwhelm. And I'm like, okay, they're thinking the word overwhelm. I need to use the word overwhelm. I'm not a big, one of the reasons I'm not a big fan of it is because it's used wrong. People talk about all the overwhelm. Overwhelm is a feeling. It's supposed to be feelings of overwhelm, I believe. Feelings of overwhelm, not, are you dealing with overwhelm? It doesn't stand alone like that. And yet, that's how we use it. And language shifts and changes, and words change over time. And this is just the vernacular of the day, right? And the way that we say things now. And I need to get over that. But also, my audience uses the word, and therefore I need to be using the word, right? And that's the kind of thing that you can really learn. And those are just little things that you can learn, but they can make a big difference. So what I'm saying is, when you're talking to your audience, you're not just getting your answer, like, what are you struggling with, what they're struggling with. You're also getting how they perceive their world, how they verbalize things. You're getting their perspective, things that you need in order to understand them better so you can serve them better. So tell me in the in the comments if this is helpful for you. I'd love to know if this is working for you. Cheryl says swamped, overburdened. Yeah, other words that we can use for overwhelm. However, if people aren't thinking with those words, it might not connect with them. Overburdened, maybe not. Swamped, though. I bet you people are saying, oh, I'm swamped, right? So there's a word we should use. And we can learn those words by talking to our audience. So it's not just finding out what their struggles are. It's also figuring out what language they're using, listening to what language they're using to describe those things to us. So I just wanted to share that because there's more to it than just what is the answer to their question. We need to listen more deeply to it. It can also help to listen, this is just another level, to what they're not saying. Things that we work on that they're not saying to us. What directions are we going in that aren't important to them, just as what things they are saying are important to them. Gosh, I hope that came out in the right way. I hope that made sense. In any case, what I have for you now are 3 questions that I'm asking my audience, and I'm going to give them to you in the order that I'm asking them. And if this isn't an exact question that you would ask, my question for you while I'm going through this is, what question would you ask them that does the same thing? And it depends. It depends on what you're doing. If you are a coach like me, Cheryl is a health coach, then these questions might really fit what you're looking for. But if you do something else, like I have some artists that are in my community, some artists in the membership, and they might ask this question a little bit differently. But without further ado, here are the questions that I'm recommending that you ask your audience. And and I've got some questions for you along the way. So the first question that I recommend you ask is about, drumroll please, their desired outcome. So the question I ask is, if your business was doing everything you wanted it to, what does that end result look like? And what I'd like to know as I'm asking you this is, how do you want to ask that question to your audience? Do you want to ask the same question, or do you want to ask a different question? So I mentioned I have some artists in my audience. I have some artists in my membership, and they might be asking something like, what is that? Where is that art going to go for you? Or what do you, when you bring that art into your world, what will it bring you? Right? It's a bigger question. It's not just what are you trying to accomplish with your business? It's like, what does that end result look like? You're asking them to think bigger. One of the things I found in these interviews, and they were 20 to 40 minute interviews, depending on who I talked to and just how deep we went. One of the things that I found, and I think that they told me they found, was that the question was, the conversation I had with my audience was helpful for them thinking bigger about their business. And I actually mentally walked them through some of these things, and they got out of their own box a little bit and were thinking bigger, which can be incredibly helpful. As you know, it's the end of the week as I'm talking to you live here, and it can be, we're buried by our businesses at this point. It can be so helpful to step out and back and be like, what am I really trying to do here? And that's the kind of conversation that I was having with them. And it doesn't just stop there, right? It's not just if your business was doing everything you wanted it to, what does the end result look like? We'd then dig into that. And I'd ask them to give me bigger pictures of stuff, and we'd go on a little bit more. And I'd ask what are called probing questions, and just ask them a little bit more about what they envision and what they're looking for and what that end result looks like. Because I'm not just building a course to just solve this problem. I'm building a course to solve this problem so that they can live the life they're trying to live. That's the whole point. But I need to know what that is. I need to know what that looks like. And that's why I'm asking this question. So that's the first question. If your business was doing everything you wanted to do, what would that end result look like? Then, and I'm giving these to you in order, then I back up. I ask them to back up, to ask, what are you struggling with right now? And per our previous conversation here, I could also say things like, where are you stuck? Or what's blocking you? Or what's stopping you? There are other ways to ask this question, but I generally start with backing up. What are you struggling with right now? And I do that very intentionally. So it's not just what does that end result, I'm asking what does that end result look like in order for them to get a view of what they're looking, what they're really wanting to happen, what they envision, so that we can back up and say, what are you struggling with? Because what they tell me then has more to do with where they're trying to go and not just what did I wake up and need to do this morning. And I'm looking for that big picture. And again, I'm also hoping that these conversations will help them think bigger. And, so that what are you struggling with right now? Because I ask it second, shifted, I believe, what kind of question they're asking. And the word I want to use here is anchor. When I ask that first big question, I'm anchoring them in that view so that when they ask the next question, it's with that view in mind. What are you struggling with right now? And, that question can vary. You want to let them go wherever they go with it, and then again, ask some more probing questions. And this is the benefit of doing it in an interview style. Could you ask this question in an email? Yes, I do it all the time. Could you ask this question on social media? Yes, I don't do that all the time. I tend to try to, bring people into my email specifically because that's where we're going to have the deeper conversations. Email for me, and I believe for introverts, can be a much more powerful space for them to be. And again, if you want to get on my email, let me pop it up there. If you want to get on my email, grab the tactical guide. That's where you'll get on my email, but you'll also get some really useful information about how you as an introvert can market yourself more effectively and more comfortably is really where I'm going. So those are the first two questions. What does that end result look like? If your business was doing everything you wanted it to, what does that end result look like? And the second one, backing up, what are you struggling with right now? And then, and here's the one, I'm wondering if this will be a surprise to you. I'm wondering, tell me in the comments, even if you're watching the recording, if this is a surprise, just put the word surprise. Here's my third question. Is there anything else you'd like to tell me about? Let me know if that was a surprise, if that was not the question you were expecting me to ask. Because, and here's why I asked this question. You want to leave yourself open. Don't let your own questions box you in. Don't let your expectations box you in. The previous questions did frame this up a little bit. I've gone through and asked them and probed and gotten all sorts of things. And so it's kind of this closing question. And sometimes I get, no, I've told, when I ask, is there anything else you'd like to tell me about? They always pause, 100%. So Cheryl said it was a surprise. Great. Thank you, Cheryl. Yeah, I'd like to know if that was a surprise. Because here's what it does. It's a wonderful way to close out a conversation without boxing you into your expectations. So is there anything else you'd like to tell me about? Makes them pause. And 100%, every single person stopped and thought. And some of them said, no, I think that's everything. But some of them said, actually, yeah, and brought us into an interesting arena of conversation that I wouldn't have known to ask about. I'm not sure how I would have, because it's something that's in their world that I need to know about, that I can help them. And with these conversations we've had, tell me about what your outcome is, tell me about what you're struggling with, they know where I'm going. They know what I'm looking for. And there might be something that's rolling around in the back of their head. Well, I want to open the door and bring that out. So I just asked them a big open question. Is there anything else you'd like to tell me about? And it's a great opportunity to dig into an arena that is important to them that I had no clue about. And I got huge takeaways from that third question. And it is set up with the first two questions. As I mentioned, they know what I'm looking for at that point. I want to go back and say one more thing. Prior to these three questions, I do not tell them why I'm asking them. I do tell them when I'm done, because it's not fair to leave them hanging, and I want them to know what I'm up to. But I do not tell them up front what I'm working on. And from an interviewing perspective, and I get my interview skills from doing a ton of research in grad school, and so I've brought a lot of those skills into this, and this is how I would do things when I would do research in grad school, is you don't want to let them know what you're working on, because it's going to direct their conversation. You want them to just tell you, I want them anyway, to just tell me what their worlds are a lot like, or like for them, or what they're experiencing without me setting it up in any way. I want them to just talk to me. So I embark almost right away in the conversation. We're social for a second. I say, okay, let's get started. I'll tell you what I'm doing when we're done. If you're okay with that, they're like, no, that's great. And so we go with these questions. And I think it also brings up a little bit more of an openness from them. It's going to go where it's important to them. That's what I'm looking for. That's what's important. So, and then again, at the end, I'm like, okay, that's it. Here's my last question. Is there anything else you'd like to tell me about? And we have what might be an additional conversation, and then I'll tell them what I'm up to. And at that point, they've relaxed a little bit. We've really, but they might even say something else, but not usually. At that point, we've gotten to where we've gone where we were trying to go. So the 3 questions, just to review these really quick, are in order: if your business was doing everything you wanted it to, what would that end result look like? The question, after we've had a nice deep conversation about that, backing up, what are you struggling with right now? So that first question sets that as an anchor that we back up from. What are you struggling with right now? And they're going to answer that question with that vision in mind. And then, is there anything else you'd like to tell me about? Which really are some of the best conversations I've had, because I'm like, wow, I wouldn't have expected that. Hey, Dr. Elo, great to have you here. Thanks for stopping by. And Cheryl's liking this conversation, as well as the order of things and how I do it. I hope you found this helpful, and I want you to declare it in the comments. I want you to declare, are you going to talk to your audience? And by talk, I mean ask them what they're doing, what they're struggling with, what they want from you. These are the best way to give them what they want from you, is to find out what they want from you, right? And so that's what this is. And with all these interviews I've done, it has really reframed the course that I'm building and brought in some things that I wouldn't have thought of. And it's not that I wouldn't have thought about it like, oh, I wouldn't want to. It's just I didn't realize they needed it. And every time I stepped away from an interview, I was like, oh, okay. And go back to my outline and add some things and make some comments. And I've got a whole list of make sure you do these things, because I'm not building this course just because I want to build a course. I'm building it to serve my audience. So I need to find out what my audience needs so that I can serve them. Let me know if this has been helpful for you. And more importantly, is there a question that I didn't say that you would ask your audience? I would love to know that. So let me know that in the comments as well. That is it for now, my friends. I am here every Thursday at 10 a.m. Let's get our times right. Yep, new course, Dr. Elo. I'm excited about it. I had an old course that I ran a number of years ago, but more than 5 years ago, and I'm grabbing it and completely reorganizing and refreshing it. So it's one I've run before, but not in this way. I'm updating it. The world has changed in the last few years, and the needs that we all have in our businesses have changed right along with it. Technology is changing. What works in marketing is changing, and all of that needs to come in. So that's what I'm working on. But if it doesn't serve my audience, it's not useful. So how does it serve my audience? This is what I'm finding out. I've been finding out in the last few weeks. It's been phenomenal, and I'm getting ready to build it now. So it's exciting. Thank you again, everyone, for being here. I appreciate you, and I will talk to you again next Thursday. Thanks so much, and have a fantastic weekend.